regulatory framework for non-target plants. They're typically exposed in a spray chamber via a track sprayer that delivers a direct overhead spray that effectively saturates foliage. And my man Brian, also known as Kenny, is going to demonstrate that here in a second. Now we have the doors of the chamber open for the purposes of illustration, but typically the doors will be closed when this application occurs. But Brian's going to basically trigger the sprayer now, just to show you what it looks like.
Brian Lee, I'm one of the plant science personnel here at Yerfin's EAG Agriscience.
So these plants right here at about the 2 to 4 leaf stage, which is specified in the protocol, and effectively once they're exposed, the plants are removed, taken out into the growth chamber, and they're grown up for 21 days to look for effects of visual, symptomology, biomass, and length. In reality, plants don't experience exposure like they do in a spray chamber under the boom of the sprayer. Otherwise, they'd be infield weeds. In fact, by virtue of being non-target and therefore off-field, plants actually experience exposure as a function of drift deposition downwind. And that's why we designed a study to evaluate plant effects in the field from an actual exposure from a sprayer subject to climatic fluctuations, drift deposition, and anything you'd experience in reality. In order to address this paradox of how non-target plants experience exposure, we developed a study design that is essentially a hybridization of the EPA drift reduction technology, or DRT protocol, and a standard vegetative vigor study protocol, where 3 parallel sampling lines are set up perpendicular to and downwind of the spray swath to capture drift deposition and interception at various distances. And between the sampling lines are arrays of sensitive potted plants staggered at predefined distances in order to assess what distance results in no effect from downwind spray drift.
Once the sprayer completes 2 parallel swaths, all sampling devices are collected and analyzed, and the plants are transported back to the greenhouse and grown for 21 days in order to evaluate potential spray drift effects. This experiment is repeated 3 to 4 times in order to replicate the results and capture variability in wind speed and direction, as well as other climatic factors.
Hi, my name is Brian Flatt. Live here in Centralia, Missouri, and my grandparents bought this farm in 1957. My dad took it over, and I've been farming here since 1992. We, as farmers, we feel we are the true environmentalists. We try to do our best to avoid off-target spraying, and doing studies with Syngenta over the last couple of years, we've actually learned a lot, and I feel like we've contributed some too. You can see we own a front mount boom sprayer. We think that might be a little bit of an advantage as far as preventing off-target drift, because we can keep the booms low and we can see them all the time. They're always right in front of us, which we think is a slight advantage. And we always try to stay with what the label says, and right now we always spray with the right nozzles and try to keep the right height, and just try to do the best job we can. I think most farmers would agree they try to do the best job they can.
Farmers do take time, and they are concerned about the land, and they are very concerned about how they can make their property and their surroundings better for the next generation.
So I'm Mark White. I'm a 5th generation farmer here in Macon, Missouri. Century farm, predominantly soybeans, corn, hay, wheat. But we also have a pretty strong conservation ethic here on the farm, and as you can see behind me, we've dedicated about 3 or 4 acres to Operation Pollinator, trying to get the beneficial species for the butterflies, the monarch butterfly, and also the bees. And a special note, it's right in the middle of our production field. We have soybeans on both sides of the plot, and in thinking about spray drift, that's a consideration, of course. But we haven't seen any impact from our pesticide applications to the plot, and we don't want to either. We do have some vegetative buffer strips here that help protect, and 15 foot is more than enough in most cases to limit any off-target spray drift. We've really seen an increase in the species here in the pollinator plot. This was some highly erodible land that was not suitable for farming and was really an economic loss to the farm, so we thought we'd put it in some conservation habitat. And we've really seen an uptick in the bee species, lots of monarchs, but the also added benefit is a lot of upland game species like quail. We've really seen a lot more of the upland game birds here due to this plot as well.
Why does this matter to farmers? Well, it is not uncommon to see calculated buffers or setbacks in the range of hundreds to even thousands of feet based on the traditional risk assessment paradigm, which is obviously not workable from an economic perspective. However, farmers are also concerned about stewardship and protecting the environment. So this study not only provides a conservative, empirically derived buffer to protect sensitive species, but also a realistic and relevant buffer to ensure maximal agronomic efficiency. These types of studies are really important because they represent the confluence of technology, farming, and regulation, and honestly, I'm honored to be a part of that.